Okay, well, it's wonderful to see so many people back here today for Professor Chen's last lecture and before tomorrow's symposium. We've had some wonderful discussions both during these meetings and also after these meetings in Chinese restaurants and other restaurants and at my home, and sort of a lot of ideas are floating around in my mind, and I'm sure that today what Professor Chen will have to say will only add to the burdens of thinking he is imposing on us. Just to remind you, the first of what Professor Chen has been doing is sort of taking soundings in various aspects of the Chinese Revolution. The first one was about the rectification campaign, the complicated, interesting relationship between Mao and Stalin and the things that Mao learned from Stalin and then implemented in China in the 1940s. An extremely chaotic period, which in the end would work very well for him, laying the basis for the success of the Chinese communists. The second lecture about Chiang Kai-shek and Britain took us from the Xiamen incident, where clearly people like Chiang Kai-shek were greatly offended by, rather unsurprisingly, the killing in front of the Xiamen concession near Canton of many Chinese protesters, and taking us through the war of resistance, the Burma campaigns and all that, sort of reminding us of one of the great aims of the Chinese Revolution. And today he is going to talk about the Ichigo Offensive of 1944. And of course the attention of the world was focused on what was happening in Europe, when the international press was focusing on what was happening in Burma, but something really very significant for developments in East Asia was occurring in China itself, as the Japanese launched the greatest military operation of its entire history in China, sweeping through the areas that still had been occupied by the nationalists. And I think it's fair to say that until recently, very few people have paid a great deal of attention to the Ichigo Offensive. Historians in China focused on the first years of the war and what the nationalists did then in order to rehabilitate the nationalists, which were said to have done nothing. And sort of the great mass of material is only now really beginning to turn towards the Ichigo Offensive, which I think in some ways determined the fate of the nationalists and of the communists as well. And so to explain to us of why that was so, how did this happen, and what the long-term consequences were, I invite Professor Chen to address us. And please do join me in welcoming him.
Okay. Thanks. And thanks for the introduction. And today I will talk about Ichigo. I know everyone knows it. And Professor Weidenfeld and just wrote a book, not just, several years ago, I guess, wrote a book about the kind of war situation. But he started from 1942, right? The first Burma campaign. Yeah. But he jumped over kind of the Ichigo. Right. And this is Ichigo means number one. Is the largest campaign ever launched by Japanese army in China in the 80 years. In fact, it's the largest one throughout the Japanese history. Even during the kind of they mobilized more than 500,000 soldiers. Okay, so the paper actually has this part, but today I only talk the second part and the fourth part. It's impossible to cover everything. Okay, here, and let me. The title, the battle. Okay, is here. The Ichigo actually consists of three kind of battles. The first one is in North China, in Henan. The second is Central China, the third one is in South China, in Guangxi. Like let's say, and I will describe in the paper. Of course, I will describe very clearly, in detail, what happened. I use this to characterize the war. In the Henan battlefield, we call it commercialization versus mechanization. the Battle of Fulan basically means the Chinese army were undertrained, and this time they were quite busy with their commercial activities. And on the other side, the Japanese made a very good preparation, and the first time they mobilized a huge kind of tank division. And it came as a surprise because the Japanese crossed the Yellow River, and Jiang wanted to resist, but he consistently kind of underestimated the Japanese kind of intention, and he didn't know. But the war not only kind of just this picture. The Japanese come across the Yellow River. This Yellow River changed kind of routes from the north to the south. And then the Japanese cross the Yellow River kind of bridge and then go to the Xuchang areas, then go southwest to the Luoyang. And then directly they went to the Ningbo. This is very important Ningbo part. In fact, is most people don't talk about it. If the Japanese continue to pursue it, the committee would be topped. But today I will not talk about it. This Ningbo was fought by not by the Fuzhongnan, by Fuzhongnan, not by the. This is the people. This is the committee general. This is Xu Yongchang. That is this minister of Xu Yongqing is military. The minister of the military affairs. This Xu Yongchang is the minister of military command, and that is his deputy. Okay, Liu Fei. And this are Zhang Zizong. That one is Lin Wei. Xiu Sihui. These are all the kind of key people surrounding Chiang Kai-shek. Okay, He Chenjun, Lin Wei. This is the first one. This is the first picture. But today I will not talk about this. But we talk directly about the second one. I think it's more interesting. This is the first one. Show you picture first. This is Fu Zhongnan. This is Jiang Dingwen. And this is Tang Wenbo. Most people would notice the Tang Wenbo. I thought they blame the defeat on the Tang Wenbo. But actually, these two all show the kind of responsibility, particularly the one in the middle. And I always thought that some kind of way, they try to manipulate the propaganda or something, so they try to verify the. Recently, there's a movie called 1942, try to say how cruel the Tang Wenbo was, and during the war, during his after his army was collapsed, the peasants coming to kind of dismantle his kind of army. Okay, this is Japanese one, the Okamura, Hata, Shinoku, and Yokohama. Okay, this is in the first one. This is the use of tank. You say it's small one, not a big one. Generally, the Japanese tank division is quite small. It's only 20% or 30% of the strength of the normal one. But this is their tanks. Okay, this is the assembly, the organ tanks. And attacking them. This is also tank. Okay. This is one thing I was very surprised is once you move the tank forces, you should use a lot of fuels. But Chiang Kai-shek intelligence didn't get that. So it's a total surprise. Right? But besides the tank forces, there's a brigade of cavalry. That's very, very important. But another thing is very important. The Japanese tried to catch the major forces of the Chinese, but they failed. That's very interesting because they tried to survive. And the Tang Wenbo troops actually survived the pursuit. But today I want to talk about the second battles. This is called Fulan, Changsha Huizhan. This I use the title called Empiricism versus Strategic Reform, the Battle of Fulan. And this I mean is, in Changsha, in the Fulan, that's basically the provincial capital is called Changsha. Here, the Chinese fought 3 times. They all won. And in this battle, the commander tried to repeat the old kind of strategy, but actually the Japanese already reformed the whole strategy, changed. So they couldn't kind of resist the army. So let me say this one. Soon after the Battle of Luoyang, the Japanese began to move their troops in central China, in addition to auxiliary forces of 2 divisions and 3 brigades. They mobilized the troops from the homeland, Manchuria, and other parts of North China to strengthen the only strategically offensive army corps in China, in the China theater, which had consisted of 8 divisions and 1 brigade, into a force of 11 divisions and 5 brigades. The actual attacking forces included 10 divisions, supported by an air division and a tank division. The first Burma campaign, the Japanese mobilized three divisions. Jiang thought only 1, but they mobilized 3. Here you see how big it is. Including the forces used in the subsequent Guangxi battles, the Japanese army mobilized 326,000 men, okay, and 128 artillery pieces, and 103 tanks. The tanks usually used in North China, not in Central China, because the rice paddy, okay, topography, and 9,450 vehicles, and 67,000 horses. Jiang's intelligence was not solid enough for designing a counter strategy. First, he thought the Japanese imperial headquarters had mobilized 9 divisions to occupy the Wuhan-Guangzhou railroad. But soon, his military intelligence experts changed the estimate of the Japanese attacking forces to only 5 divisions, perhaps excluding the second 9 kind of division that the Japanese later also used for the offensive. These attacking forces led him to believe the Japanese aimed at only the provincial capital Changsha and its surrounding counties, rather than linking the Hunan-Guangdong Railroad and destroy the airfield. This is the provincial capital, Changsha. Go this way. Here. But this nearby this railroad, this is Xiang River, and the next battlefield is in Henyang, is in this place. Okay. And this attacking force led him to believe the Japanese aimed at only the provincial capital Changsha and its surrounding counties, rather than linking the Hunan-Guangdong Railroad and destroying the airfields nearby. He further inferred from the level of the mobilization that it was not difficult for the Japanese army to occupy Changsha, despite the fact that they had tried 3 times without success. But if it could maximize the advantages in topography and transportation, the Chinese army could still win a victory as they had done earlier. The Japanese would have to charge with their artillery pieces and other heavy equipment through numerous rivers and rice paddies. With air supremacy that General Stilwell had promised, Jiang had reasons for being optimistic. During the earlier Helan battle, Jiang understood very well how vital air support was to the defense of his ground troops. He worked very hard to seek the cooperation of General Stilwell, but the American general was much more interested in wresting the command of several divisions and later the whole Chinese army from Chiang's authority through the leverage of controlling land-lease materials, on which an adequate operation of his air and ground forces would depend. While the Helan battles were raging, Jiang twice sent telegrams to Stilwell, only to fall on deaf ears. The American general wanted Jiang to commit more troops to North Burma, while Jiang saw no military sense for so doing unless Britain and the United States honored their earlier commitment for more ground troop and Navy support. Chiang swallowed his personal dignity and anger, doubling his efforts to enlist the cooperation of General Stilwell, particularly for the supply of airplane fuel. Chiang also urged the commander of other war zones, especially the 6th and the 9th, to launch the diversionary attacks, but this later proved highly ineffective. Preoccupied with the military situation in Shanxi until mid-June, Chiang entrusted the defense of Changsha to the commander of the 9th War Zone, General Xue Yue, a hero who had made fame for his 3 successful defense of the provincial capital. Xue Yue delegated the job to the recently promoted commander of the 4th Army, Zhang Deren. In light of his earlier successful experiences, Jiang offered General Xue Yue 2 bits of advice, which Xue might have adopted anyway. First, fight on attrition war and delay Japanese movements. Second, avoid the main Japanese army and focus their attack on smaller units. However, all this advice turned out to be obsolete because the Japanese had devised a strategy that remedied their mistakes in the 3 earlier attempts to occupy the provincial capital. The Japanese generals also threw much larger forces into this attempt and launched the attack on Changsha 20 days earlier than expected, on May 27, before the Chinese forces could prepare an adequate defense. The Japanese assembled their attacking force and divided them into 3 columns, moving southward, placing their priorities on the eastern flank. They moved from east one, this one, east one, okay. The best divisions were put on the mountains that served as the source of the waterway flowing westward to the Xiang River, with the column west of the Xiang River assigned to prevent reinforcements arriving from the 6th War Zone. Only the central column followed the old routes east of the Xiang, which pointed directly to Changsha. The powerful left flank attack freed the central column from falling into what General Xue Yue called heavenly furnace, for depriving the defenders of the advantage for falling back to the hilly and mountainous areas. The central columns then moved slowly but steadily with its heavier artillery and equipment through the rivers, swamps, and rice paddies. Overconfident in his previous strategy, General Xue Yue made a further blunder by situating himself far away from the combat zone, leaving General Zhang Deren, the commander of the 4th Army, to handle the defense of Changsha. That force had won the name of Iron Army for its heroic fighting during the Northern Expedition, and the commander had obtained his promotion without the benefit of any ties to the Wangpu Military Academy. The defense of Changsha constituted of 2 tasks. The walled areas was located east of the Xiang River and the Yuelu Mountains across the river, while Jiang had constructed a supposedly impregnable artillery base overlooking the city. 2.5 weeks after the beginning of the Japanese offensive, on June 15, General Zhang suddenly found 2 Japanese divisions approaching both south and west of the capital, a challenge he could not have imagined based on his previous experiences. Jiang construed the Yuelu Mountain Artillery Base as the guardian of the Changsha, helping the defenders of the walled city to repel Japanese invaders. Aware of the Japanese attempt to envelop Changsha, he urged General Xue Yue to keep open the road traffic to the west and prepare for a possible flanking attack from Henyang in the south. In mid-June, Jiang was preoccupied primarily with the fallout of the Helan battle and its impact on domestic and international opinions, particularly the sharp criticism within his party and government. Seeking comfort from what Hu Zhongnan claimed to be a major victory at Ningbo, he paid no attention to the actual defense of Changsha. But to his dismay, 2 days after the morning radio contact, he was unable to reach General Zhang Zeren, no matter how hard he had tried. The silence was then followed by a Japanese radio broadcast that claimed air bombing and had effectively neutralized the Yuelu mountain artillery base, and that the provincial capital was doomed. Jiang could not understand the radio silence. If the Japanese army used the propaganda leaflet to urge the defenders to surrender, it meant there was still some resistance from the Chinese defenders. Why could he hear nothing from the General Zhang Zeren's headquarters? Puzzled by the lack of the radio communication, Jiang wondered whether the Japanese Air Force had used poison gas to knock out all of the soldiers, but he quickly realized that no gas attack was so effective as to silence a whole army. He then pondered how much truth the enemy broadcasting had revealed. To prepare for Japanese attack, Chiang Kai-shek had strengthened the Yuelu mountain base with the installation of the most advanced heavy artillery, as well as the storage of 50,000 artillery shells. General Zhang Zeren's Fourth Army consisted of 3 divisions. Despite the opposition of Xue's chief of staff, he insisted on putting 2 of his 3 divisions in the city and assigned an undersized division, only about 3,000 combat soldiers to defend the Yuelu base. The decision played into Japanese strategy, which emphasized the attack at the periphery rather than the core of Changsha. And focused on the occupation of the Yuelu base rather than on a front assault on the walled city. The Japanese army started their attack from the Yuelu base complex on June 16. It took them only 2 days to achieve victory. Once occupying the base, they immediately used the captured artillery and shells to blast Changsha. Exposed to the artillery attack from the hilltop of the rear, General Zhang's army immediately fell into panic, and he ordered a breakout. The defense of the walled city of Changsha did not last more than 1 day, only 1 day. Jiang was so exasperated by the quick fall of Changsha that he ordered a court-martial for the responsible officers, while blaming himself for not managing to know his officers and troops better. For political reasons, he had to leave General Xue aside, so he ordered the arrest of General Zhang Zeren. Later, his chief military judge, someone who had made a name for winning over residual warlords rather than for the strict implementation of military law, recommended life imprisonment after protracted interrogation and investigation. Evidence suggests that General Zhang brushed aside the advice of Xue's chief of staff that successful defense of Changsha should hinge on the defense of the artillery base and refused to adjust the deployment accordingly, thus depriving the artillery base of necessary infantry protection. Determined to make a show of his anger, Jiang overruled the verdict and ordered the execution of General Zhang Zeren during the subsequent Battle of Henyang. It has been rumored that Jiang used the military defeat to purge officers who did not belong to his faction. Such a malicious raiding is not warranted, but it did occur to Jiang that he could not count on foreign or co-opted native troops for urgent and important missions. If he had a dependable, trained army together with an air force at his disposal, he believed he could still have saved Changsha. Jiang emphasized loyalty and dependability far more than other qualities of his commanding generals. He did not know General Zhang had graduated from a military academy in Yunnan and attributed his military incompetence to climbing upward through the rank and file, so he doesn't know much. Perhaps for this reason, he chose his Huangpu student general, Huang Xianjue, and his 10th Army for the defense of Henyang, an important transportation junction center south of Changsha. His dealing with Xue Ye revealed the importance of political considerations for military matters. As a hero of the resistance campaign, Xue Ye could not be held responsible for military defeat. Such a selective application of military law, however, encouraged wider speculation about Jiang's motivations and further harmed his prestige and authority. The Fulan battle then moved southward to Henyang, a key site that could be reached in several hours, either by train or waterway from Changsha. They say they faced the joining of two rivers along its southeast and lay against the Henshan Mountains. After the loss of Changsha, Jiang faced an internal debate as to whether his force should defend Henyang at all costs. His deputy chief of staff, the Guangxi General Bai Tongxi, was so obsessed with the defense of his home province that he urged Jiang to abandon Henyang and move all the available forces to the Fulan border with Guangxi. His deputy chief of staff, General Liu Fei, whom military observers would consider as a close follower of General Bai, saw things otherwise quite differently. A native of Hunan, he argued from his position as chief advisor that an aroused public opinion could no longer tolerate the loss of any more Chinese land. The army had to show determination to fight to the last. Jiang concurred, but asked his staff officer to make a contingent plan for the loss of Henyang. When he was still hurrying supplying officers to send provisions and ammunition, the Japanese began an attack at the airfield outside Henyang on June 25. The next day, when the Japanese army attacked Henyang, Jiang still worked very hard to expedite the logistic and air support. General Fang Xianjue's 10th Army was understaffed and ill-equipped with about 17,000 soldiers. He was now facing two Japanese divisions, about 30,000 strong. General Fang was fortunate enough, since the Japanese seriously underestimated the toughness and resilience of his soldiers, who effectively combined grenade attacks with excellent fortifications for resistance. The attacking army was initially beaten back after suffering heavy casualties, including the wounding of a division commander. When the news reached Guilin, General Bai Tongxi allowed the provincial newspaper to issue a special which then spread celebratory fireworks the whole day. One higher-ranking officer, Zhang Zizong, asked Jiang to do the same thing at Chongqing. Jiang refused because it was not a conclusive victory. Several days later, the Japanese army attacked again with bombing and shelling far fiercer than the first round. The Japanese failure in their initial attack at Henyang, however, gave Jiang some cause for optimism. Given the Japanese performance in Fulan, he saw feasibility for a successful defense of Henyang. After the Japanese movement of their troops from Guangdong, he even planned to make a decisive war south of Henyang, where General Fang weakened the Japanese force from the north and knew another Japanese force from the south. Instead of rushing the Canton reinforcements, he asked the commander of the 62nd Army, the only army with full strength nearby, to slow down in his attempt to reach Henyang. Jiang wanted to set a trap there. Jiang did not know the Japanese thought similarly. They prepared to use a second attack wave to lure more Japanese reinforcements into Japanese traps. Aware of the Japanese moves outside Henyang, he chose to interpreted them as attempt to divert China's reinforcement in order to enable the attacking divisions to withdraw from Henyang. He was very optimistic. Actually, by then, the Japanese were able to use 3 divisions to cope with the Chinese reinforcements, while ordering the 2 divisions to make fresh attacks at Henyang after supplying them with more provisions and ammunition. During the respite between the 2 waves of attacks, Chiang did not have the luxury of relaxation. Domestic and international public opinion continually questioned his ability to lead the nation, or at least to command his army. Various rumors about Jiang and his family had been circulating in Chongqing since the spring, but then an anonymous letter in British English reached Madame Jiang, listing the actual meritorious affairs and other heinous deeds of Jiang and his 2 sons, particularly his eldest son's bastard twins. As his wife was preparing for a long absence for medical treatment in Brazil, Jiang found it necessary for the couple to swear their moral integrity in front of a wide high-ranking of officials, foreign missionaries, and dignitaries. At the very same time, the clash between Jiang and the American Chief of Staff, General Stilwell, also reached a climax. Urged by General Stilwell, President Roosevelt sent a telegram to Jiang and used the poor performance of his Chinese troops in the Middle Yangtze to justify his urging him to entrust the whole Chinese army to General Stilwell. That this telegram reaching his hand on the 7th anniversary of Marco Polo Bridge incidents, the beginning of the War of Resistance, pained Jiang to the extreme. Strengthened with running artillery shells and supported by domination of the skies, the Japanese army launched a second attack. Again, the Japanese underestimated General Huang's tenacity and resilience. 5 days after the attack, Jiang finally realized that the Japanese had no intention of abandoning their ambition for conquer Henyang, and dispatched about 30,000 fresh soldiers to the front. The Japanese army used the attack of the 10th Army as an opportunity to lure the Chinese reinforcements for annihilation. The 62nd Army of Canton hurried to Henyang, but only reached the outskirts, where the Japanese dug in and, despite heavy casualties, refused to yield the road. In spite of Jiang's personal letter of encouragement, Fang's army was indeed exhausted. It could not even find a battalion of soldiers to bear arms and go outside the walls to welcome the reinforcements. After repeated orders, General Fang finally put up a rectangle battalion to do the job, but they were ambushed and annihilated no sooner than they had stepped outside the city walls. Jiang blamed the commander of the 62nd Army for timidity and cowardice, but the real reason was Japanese adjustment of their strategy. They decided to leave Fang's army aside while focusing on the assault and the destruction of the reinforcements. As the reinforcement failed to reach Henyang near the end of July, Jiang's desperateness grew, something that can be seen in his prayers, his devoted Christian. Here, I use this. The very day after General Fang's failure to link with the 2nd Army on July 20, Jiang prayed to God, saying that he felt entrapped in a well, facing only pitch-dark walls, and with wounds all over his body. If not extended to a helping hand, he feared he would be condemned to eternal shame, unable to fulfill his endowed mission. 5 days later, when he realized the futility of sending reinforcement, he even promised God to construct a huge iron cross on the top of the nearby Hengshan mountain on his 60th birthday, if granted victory, and a mass conversion of his whole 10th Army to Christianity was promised. Okay. As nothing came from the prayers, he examined himself, stating that, I could face heaven and earth as well as ghosts and gods with clear conscience. If God wants to fulfill his will through me as his tool, what enemy force can beat me? But realizing the Japanese determined to occupy Henyang, as well as the Wuhan-Guangdong Railroad, he admitted his inability to prevent it from becoming a reality, unless God intervened on Jiang China's behalf. Gradually, he resigned himself to the inevitable, but quoting from the streams in the desert, this book he's read a lot. He considered all sufferings the badge of being one of the elect. Beyond Jiang's expectations, Fang was able to hold out due to the fact that the Japanese army gave higher priority to the interception of China's reinforcements outside Henyang. During the respite between attacks, Jiang allowed himself the comfort of imagination. He imagined the Japanese attacking force as an arrow lost approaching to the end of its flight. Actually, the Japanese army devoted far larger forces to the interception, and destruction of the Chinese reinforcements. They easily beat away the 79th Army, which came from northwestern Fulan to lift the city of Henyang. However, the 62nd Army, which received some air support, was able to inflict high casualties on the invaders. After 8 days fighting, a large Japanese regiment had to use non-combat soldiers to stop a breakthrough of their positions. The other Japanese soldiers stayed outside. They didn't get in the battle. Meanwhile, 4 days after Jiang made the first observation that the Japanese force acted as an arrow of spent force, which he could be brought to an end by his reinforcement, the Japanese strengthened his Henyang army with 2 additional divisions, preparing to strike a crushing blow on Fang's decimated forces. After powerful artillery shelling, as well as air bombing and strafing, the attacking army quickly broke the backbone of the resistant force. General Fang sent in almost simultaneously 3 consecutive radio messages, first requesting reinforcements, then reporting urgency, and finally confessing we are finished. 15 minutes later, Jiang found a wave of Chinese air bombing put a stop to the Japanese offensive. He misread the temporary suspension of the offensive as proof that his prayer 15 minutes ago elicited God's response. Again, Jiang promised Fang that he would send, you see how desperate he was, okay? Again, Jiang promised Fang that he would send a tank regiment from Guangxi to relieve the siege. He could not sleep that night, and after the prayer, he began to rework the directive he had sent to the tank commander 3 days before, reminding him that they should reach Henyang the same day and rush to the front with a company of infantry troops. The promised tank regiment never materialized. It actually made little advance due to topographic problems and the Japanese mopping up campaigns along their planned route. 2 days after the urgent note mentioned above, Fang found that he had less than 2,000 men still capable of bearing arms, and most of them had no combat experiences. Realizing his end was approaching, Fang and his division commanders sent Jiang a farewell telegram, pledging to fight to death. Fang then committed suicide, but failed because of the timely intervention of his subordinates. Unable to die and unable to fight, Fang eventually chose to negotiate for something like an honorable surrender. He promised to lay down weapons in exchange for medical treatment for all the wounded soldiers. The Japanese army accepted conditions, but later honored only part of the agreement. General Fang was incarcerated in a Catholic church on a nearby mountains, albeit without strict surveillance. Having received the farewell telegram, Jiang still harbored hopes. He interpreted an area intelligence report as suggesting that the situation could be improved if reinforcement were encouraged to move fast. On the very night of the farewell telegram, he got up 3 times to say prayers. Pondering heavenly principles, human affairs, and his devotion to God, he thought he deserved a miracle bestowed from above. But area reconnaissance soon revealed without a doubt that there was no longer any signs of China's resistance. Gripped by shame, grief, and deep sorrow, Jiang tried to seek comfort from his wife, but she was thousands of miles away. Unable to reveal his emotion to his sons, he chose to recite the mansions. Okay, he read this fast flowing passion nature is exceedingly great and exceedingly strong, being nourished by rectitude and sustaining no injury. It fills up all between heaven and earth. It is the mate and assistant of righteousness and reason. Without it, man is a state of starvation. Someone translated vast flowing passion nature as noble spirit, the 浩然之气, in 孟子. Only by identifying with Mention's noble spirit of vast flowing passion nature was Jiang able to live through the long ordeal of military debacles. Unable to see General Fang as a traitor, Jiang simply dismissed the Japanese broadcasts that claimed that Fang had raised white flags, begging surrender like the British general in Singapore. Before the broadcasts, Jiang had edited a short biography of General Fang, hoping to use his heroic exploits to encourage the rank and file. His order to distribute the biography met opposition from his staff, who were concerned about the possible sharp turn of events. Now Jiang had even more to worry about. Some people cited Japanese broadcasting to question General Fang's patriotism and accused him as a traitor. American officers traced such accusations with a photograph at the scene of the negotiations, which only showed Fang's back without any clear signs of begging for peace. Despite all this contrary and embarrassing evidence, Jiang insisted on trusting Fang's patriotism and spent several more days finishing the latter's biography together with a telegram about the enormous sacrifices the 10th Army had made at Henyang. Later, Japanese changes of their story about General Fang gave him some relief and comfort, with subsequent broadcasts claiming that negotiations had started after finding General Fang in a dugout rather than waving a white flag. These events continued to haunt China, however, especially after General Fang escaped from Japanese hands several months afterwards. Despite favoring reinstatement of Fang's, however, Jiang had to confront loud public opinion that stand for high-pitched patriotism and demanded complete sacrifice for the resistance cause. What General Stilwell's staff officer predicted as a defense unlikely to last more than 7 days turned out to be actually a defense lasting 47 days and overwhelming Japanese shelling and bombing. Despite his failure to honor his promise of suicide, Fang had accomplished what no other Chinese officer could do: write one of the best chapters of the resistance war. 2 days after the ravaged city of Henyang fell, Jiang made the following reflection on the 7 days battle. My failure in grasp opportunities in guiding the war, this is what I quote from him, diary. My failure to grasp opportunities in guiding the war explained the fall of Henyang. False intelligence accounts for the mistakes I have made. First, I thought the Japanese army would withdraw out of their own accord. Next, I underestimated the Japanese strength, refusing to hurry the reinforcement. I frequently missed the opportunities. Finally, the troops from Guangdong and Guangxi lost the will to fight and break the siege. I gave the tank division formation. This tank formation is a KMT direct affiliate to Chiang Kai-shek. 3 more days to prepare. But when I ordered the immediate reinforcement, they excused themselves, citing problems with rivers and topography. My agony and anger rose to extremes. The officers' intellect and the troops' command over techniques are so low. How our army can be called an army? How can we be spared results from the foreigners? The state of our army seemed to force me to hand training and command of the entire force to Stilwell. This is he wrote in here. Jiang admitted that he had made many mistakes in directing the Henyang campaign, but he placed more blame on failures of military intelligence and the training of his troops. Actually, he had already by this time began to ponder a military reform that aimed at improving the fighting capabilities of his army, although no concrete methods were adopted about improvement in military intelligence. Before the reform could have any effect, Jiang still had to use those resources at his disposal to continue the resistance. Meanwhile, as a national leader, he had to face serious challenge to his leadership. Internationally, the Americans criticized his poor leadership and pressured him to give command of his troops to General Stilwell. Domestically, the Chinese communists began to win increasing sympathy and support from public opinion and pressured him for a political reform. Jiang considered suicide, but a sense of historical mission encouraged him to stand fast. He told himself, as long as I lived, the country would have a future. Neither the communist bandits nor the Japanese invaders would succeed if I were around. If I became pessimistic and discouraged or harbored the idea of killing myself for the country, then the country and the people would perish together. This is his said. Besides the trust of the soldiers and people, he emphasized that control over military and financial power would guarantee his ultimate success in dealing with both domestic and international enemies. In other words, he had no intention to relinquish his powers, let alone to a foreigner or a foreign country. This is the second battle. 没关系，待会我就先看这个 picture is okay. 这是 General 血液，这是 his general. Jiang didn't you know he's trained in military academy. He thought he was a soldier. This is the Chinese army again. Soldier without helmet, no helmet, no sand. So this is the logistics. This is I think it's in Yuelu Mountain. This is the Chinese heavy equipment. All were the Chinese didn't destroy all of them. And so the Japanese used that to attack the Changsha. This is the Wang Xianjue. And this is before on the eve of the battle, they inspected the fortifications, the generals. And this is this is the major weapon, very, very effective. This is the pictures the American showed to the Chinese press. Wang Xianjue, you only see the back. You don't see him, okay? And this is Japanese launch attack at Henyang. This one, okay. This is when the Japanese prepared the suicide notes before launching attack the Japanese. Okay, this is after the war. The whole Henyang was destroyed except 2 or 3 houses, all destroyed. Okay. These are the people who died, sacrificed for the Henyang. Afterward, Jiang tried to collect all the bones, all that, and all the people. This is 5,000 Chinese killed by the Japanese in Henyang. Okay. Then next part is I talk about the Guangxi battles, but I will not read it. I think we still have some time. Now, okay, then I read something about the Jiang's reform. No serious attempt at military reform could be detected in the military conference called in the Henyang, Hunan, after the Lunar New Year of February 1944. During the defense of Changsha and Henyang in the following summer, Chiang Kai-shek ordered this conference to be reconvened in order to reform and rectify the army. This decision certainly had something to do with Roosevelt's support for Stilwell about the Chinese military command. Jiang found the military performance in Henyang, in Henan, was so embarrassing that he had to do something to remedy the situation. The agenda Jiang had in mind included the following priorities: a system for military conscription, green taxation from the rural sectors, the investigation of unaccounted military units, the training and treatment of new recruits, reducing the size of the army by disbanding the superfluous units, raising wages for soldiers and officers, eliminating army's smuggling activities, minimizing and controlling army's commercial adventures, and last, getting rid of the army's habit of eating the ghost soldiers, by which officers claim a payment unwarranted by actual number of soldiers. If this last list can serve as an indicator of Jiang's sense of urgency, we say that he was concerned first and foremost with the extraction of resources from society, second, the performance of his troops, and third, breaches of military discipline by engaging in smuggling and commercial activities. What he saw and heard about the military conscription gave him deep grief and pain. During the fighting of Linbao, he witnessed a group of peasant recruits roped and herded like animals by county militiamen. He was so angry that he lost his temper and stopped his limousine, stepping down and beating two officers with a cane. He thought, if such an illegal matter can be seen here, we should have no difficulty to imagine what actually happens outside the capital. During the interlude between the Henyang and the Guilin battles, one of his sons informed him about abuses against the recruits by transport teams. The angry father asked the responsible ministers, concerned officials, to come to the scene to see the maltreatment with their own eyes. Having witnessed the sick, starving, and the beaten recruits, he suddenly lost his temper and used his stick to hit the responsible platoon leaders and even the lieutenant general in charge of the Bureau of Military Recruitment, who had reached this house late because the previous night his underlings gave him a farewell banquet in which Beijing opera was staged, followed by a game of mahjong to celebrate the promotion. Jiang did not know the cause of his being unable to appear on time at the scene, but simply unable to bear such miserable sights, and leading to vent his anger, he beat the general until his pair of glasses fell on ground. Afterwards, Jiang instructed the general, as well as his military bosses, to stay in the room and engage in self-reflection. This is the way he did the job. Unfortunately, Jiang's anger and punishment did not end these abuses. Specifically, the maltreating, scolding, beating, starving, and even killing of recruits, not to mention the inadequacy of clothing and the medical treatment, all problems that continue to haunt the nationalist army. Jiang sought to improve the system by issued issuing detailed instructions about the transport of recruits from their home to the front, or by ordering the gendarmes to immediately report all the abuses and their perpetrators, while specifying minimum provisions for recruits, such as bed, quilt, and clothing. He looked into all the details. However, a list of other factors, such as budget constraints, institutional backlogs, and low standard of recruits, and the intervention of local elites, all prevented Jiang from putting an end to the recurring sight of roped recruits, despite the upgrading of the Bureau of Military Recruitment to a ministry, which was asked to double its efforts to send recruits after the loss of the human resources from the three provinces of Henan, Funan, and Guangxi. Jiang also knew that the loss of Henyang, Henan, Funan, Henyang, and Guangxi meant the doubling or tripling of the grain burden for the peasants in the unoccupied areas, particularly Sichuan. During the Japanese offensive, he had also noticed the increasing impact of grain requisitions. He never mentioned Tangbo's alienating peasants by the army's direct and relentless grain acquisitions from the rural areas, but he certainly noticed heavy taxation had already led to local uprising in Guizhou, and that the abuses of military men had led to a large-scale rebellion of peasants in northern Hubei in early November 1944, which ended in the killing of 20,000 to 300,000 people. Similar riots occurred in Sichuan. Jiang asked the landlord and rice merchants to shoulder larger burden by purchasing national bonds. But unlike the communist force, he never exploited the class antagonism and the redistributive mechanism behind such policies as reasonable burden, actually tax burden redistribution, and rent interest reduction to mobilize peasants into pressing the wealthy landlords, rich peasants, and other rural elite to shoulder the larger financial burdens. Later, nobody could miss the alienating effect of Jiang's attractive policies endangered, equally prompting many Sichuan local elite and strongmen to turn to blind eye to and even support the Communist conquest in Sichuan in 1949. To increase peasant incomes, the Communist Party encouraged the cooperative movement, but even though Jiang meant to duplicate these experiences, he could not make progress due to the failure of his grassroots officials to mobilize the organized peasants. I think time is up, but I think later in this part I just talk about they try to adopt different measures, but most of the time just simply because they had no way to mobilize the poor peasants, and there's no way to set a solid base for his kind of army. And then that forced Chiang Kai-shek to rely on American support and cooperation. But unfortunately, that support is not consistent. And so when the American government has its own kind of consideration, they stopped at it, then his army just was doomed. Here I talk more in terms of big terms, not small terms. Yeah. And in the conclusion part, I just talk more just to summarize the three battles, three Funan, Henan, and Guangxi battles. Okay, I stop here.